Hey fellas, I never imagined I'd be sharing my story here, but I guess life has a way of throwing you curveballs. My name's Michael. I'm 36 and I live in Los Angeles. Up until a few months ago, I thought my marriage to Claire, my wife of 8 years, was unshakable. We weren't perfect, but who is, right? I was convinced we had something real, something worth holding on to. Turns out I was fooling myself. It all began on our wedding anniversary. Claire had been dropping hints for weeks that she wanted something special. Nothing over the top, she said, but she wanted to feel appreciated. I racked my brain trying to come up with the perfect gift. Jewelry felt too predictable, and she already had enough handbags to open a boutique. Then it hit me. A smartwatch. Claire had been talking about being more organized lately. She complained about losing track of time during her busy days and missing notifications on her phone. I figured the watch would be thoughtful, practical, and show her I was paying attention. Plus, it wasn't just any smartwatch, it was top of the line, complete with all the bells and whistles. When I handed her the gift that evening, the look on her face made it seem like I'd done something right. "Oh my God, Michael, this is amazing," she said, her eyes lighting up as she tore open the box. She threw her arms around me and kissed me like she hadn't in months. For a brief moment, I thought, yeah, this is exactly what our marriage needed, a little spark to remind us of what we have. As she tried it on and played with the settings, I couldn't help but feel proud of myself. "I synced it with your phone," I said casually, explaining how she could track her steps, get notifications, and even make calls directly from the watch. She beamed at me and said, "You're too good to me, Michael. I don't deserve." Looking back, that line makes me laugh, and not in a good way. At the time, I brushed it off as her being humble. I had no idea it would soon take on a completely different meaning. Here's the thing. When I sync the watch, it automatically connected to my phone too. I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured it was just a useful backup in case she ever lost her messages or forgot her password. I didn't even mention it to her because, well, why would I? It was just a harmless feature. At least that's what I thought. For a while, life went on as usual. Claire was glued to her new watch, and I felt good about making her happy. I thought it was a small step toward rekindling the connection we'd started to lose over the years. What I didn't know was that the very gift I gave her to stay connected would soon reveal the truth about how disconnected we really were. At that moment, I was still blissfully unaware of what was coming. I had no idea that the watch I thought would bring us closer would instead expose the lies and betrayal hiding just beneath the surface of our marriage. If only I had known what was around the corner. But ignorance is bliss, right? At least until it isn't. At first, everything seemed normal. Claire loved her smartwatch and wore it everywhere. She'd show it off to her friends, gush about how thoughtful I was, and even joke that she could now be a little more organized. For a while, I felt like I'd made the right choice. She seemed happier, lighter, and our interactions felt a bit less strained. But then, a few weeks later, things started to feel off. The first hint came on a random Tuesday. I was at work when a notification from Claire's watch popped up on my phone. Normally, I'd see messages like, "Don't forget milk," or reminders for her yoga classes. But this one was different. It was from a number I didn't recognize, and the message read, "Looking forward to seeing you. Can't wait to see you on Friday." I froze. My stomach dropped. It was just vague enough to make me wonder, but intimate enough to set alarm bells ringing in my head. Who sends a message like that to someone who's married? I told myself it could be innocent, maybe a friend or coworker. Still, it gnawed at me. When Claire got home that evening, I casually asked how her day had been. She shrugged and said, same old. Meetings, deadlines, you know how it is." Her tone was dismissive, like she was brushing me off. Normally, I wouldn't have thought much of it, but now, with that message in the back of my mind, her words felt rehearsed, like she was hiding something. The next few days didn't help. More messages came through, each one more suspicious than the last. They were never outright incriminating, but always had a certain tone. Stuff like, "Friday can't come fast enough," and "missed you this week." It's like my gut told me something wasn't right, but I kept trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe I was overthinking things. But then another message came through, and this one removed all doubt. It said, "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. My heart felt like it had been punched out of my chest." Last night? Claire had told me she was out late working on a big project with her team. She even came home with takeout, claiming she hadn't eaten all day. And now I was reading this? I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or confront her right then and there, but I didn't. Something told me to wait, to gather more information before I made any accusations. I needed to be sure. I needed proof. Because if Claire was cheating, and by this point my gut told me she was, I couldn't just go off on her without solid evidence. So I decided to keep quiet and watch. I told myself I'd give her the benefit of the doubt, but deep down, I already knew. Something was going on, and it wasn't innocent. All I had to do now was figure out exactly what it was. After that message about last night, I couldn't shake the sinking feeling in my gut. Every time Claire smiled at me or acted like everything was fine, it felt like a slap in the face. But I kept my cool. If I was going to confront her, I needed undeniable proof, something she couldn't twist or talk her way out of. The smartwatch notifications kept rolling in, and every day they painted a clearer picture of what was going on. At first, I told myself I'd just monitor the messages casually, but it quickly became something I couldn't look away from. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. You don't want to see it, but you can't stop yourself. The messages became more explicit. There were flirty texts like, "You looked so hot in that dress the other night," and ones that made my blood boil, like, "Can't stop thinking about our night together. You're incredible." Each one was like a punch to the stomach. The worst part, Claire had been with me almost every night, smiling, laughing, and acting like everything was normal. I started taking screenshots of every message. At first it felt sneaky, like I was crossing a line, but I reminded myself that she had already crossed it first. I wasn't snooping, I was protecting myself. I saved the screenshots in a folder on my phone and backed them up to my email just in case. The evidence was stacking up fast. One night, as we were sitting on the couch watching TV, another message came through. Claire was scrolling on her phone, not even realizing I could see it on my screen. It said, "I'll book the hotel for next time. I can't wait to have you all to myself." I felt sick. I wanted to scream at her, to throw my phone down and demand answers, but I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I excused myself, went into the bathroom, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. My mind was racing. Who was this guy? How long had this been going on? And why the hell did she think she could get away with it? Over the next few days, I pieced together more of the puzzle. The texts mentioned his name, Derek, and hints about their meetups. One message even referenced a work dinner, which was apparently code for their little rendezvous. I started paying closer attention to her behavior too. She'd been spending a lot more time working late or meeting up with friends who, conveniently, I never seemed to see anymore. It was all adding up. The lies, the excuses, the sneaky behavior. It was like she wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Or maybe she just thought I was too stupid to notice. Either way, I knew I couldn't sit on this forever, but before I confronted her, I needed to know just how deep this rabbit hole went. That's when I decided to get some help. I wasn't going to tackle this alone. I needed a plan, and I knew just the person who could help me set it in motion. After weeks of gathering evidence, I was done playing the waiting game. I had enough screenshots and suspicions to fill a novel, but I wanted more than just messages on a screen. I needed something concrete, something that would leave no room for doubt when I finally confronted Claire. That's when I reached out to my friend Jason. Jason and I go way back. He's one of those guys who's always calm under pressure, and his job in business consulting has given him a knack for thinking strategically. If anyone could help me figure out how to handle this mess, it was him. We met for coffee at a quiet spot in downtown LA, and I laid everything out. I showed him the screenshots, explained the texts, and even told him about the Derek guy. Jason listened intently, nodding as I spilled my story. When I was done, he leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "Well," he said, "if you just confront her now, she'll probably deny everything or spin some ridiculous story. But if you want her caught red-handed, we need a plan." He was right. Claire had always been a smooth talker, someone who could twist a situation to her advantage. If I didn't have irrefutable evidence, she'd find a way to wriggle out of it. That's when Jason came up with an idea. He'd pose as a potential investor and arrange a meeting with Derek. The goal was to bait Derek into thinking it was a business opportunity, but really it was just a setup to get Claire and him in the same room. "Are you sure you want to go this far?" Jason asked, his voice serious. "Yes, this could get messy." I didn't hesitate. "I need to know the truth, Jason, all of it. If they're willing to risk everything for this, I want to see it with my own eyes." Jason agreed to help, and over the next week, he worked on creating a fake business opportunity. He set up a LinkedIn profile, complete with a fake company name and a convincing backstory. Then, using some mutual connections he dug up online, he reached out to Derek, posing as an investor looking for someone with Derek's expertise. It didn't take long for Derek to bite. The guy must have been desperate for validation or money, or maybe both. They arranged a meeting at a trendy restaurant in LA, the kind of place Claire always claimed was too busy for us to go to. Jason told me the time and date, and we worked out the plan. Jason would get Derek talking about their business, and I'd show up unannounced. I was nervous as hell, but also oddly relieved. For the first time, I felt like I was taking control of the situation instead of just sitting around waiting for the other shoe to drop. I didn't know what I'd find or how Claire would react, but one thing was certain. The truth was about to come out, and there'd be no hiding from it. The day of the meeting felt like it couldn't come soon enough. I was running on adrenaline, anxiety, and a growing sense of determination. This was the moment I'd been building toward, the moment I'd finally see Claire and Derek's betrayal in action. Jason kept me updated on the plan as we got closer, assuring me that Derek had taken the bait. The meeting was set for 7:30 p.m. at a trendy, upscale restaurant in Los Angeles, the type of place where people went to see and be seen. So the irony wasn't lost on me that this was the kind of restaurant Claire always said she wished we went to more often. Well, she was about to get her wish, just not in the way she expected. Jason got there early to secure a table and set the stage. He even brought along a fake contract folder, complete with a glossy investment proposal to make everything look legitimate. I stayed in my car, parked a few blocks away, my heart pounding in my chest as I waited for Jason to text me the signal. At 7:25, the text came through. He's here, table near the back. I gripped the steering wheel, took a deep breath, and prepared myself for what was about to happen. I didn't know if Claire would actually show up, but something in my gut told me she would. If she'd gone to such lengths to keep this affair hidden, there was no way she'd back out of meeting Derek tonight. As I walked into the restaurant, the buzzing atmosphere hit me immediately. Dim lighting, clinking glasses, soft jazz playing in the background. Couples and groups chatted around me, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in the corner. I scanned the room until I saw them. Jason sitting across from a man I instantly recognized as Derek. He looked exactly like the guy from his profile picture, tall, confident, dressed a little too sharply for a business meeting. Jason caught my eye briefly, but didn't react, keeping the act going. I walked past their table casually and found a spot near the bar where I could keep an eye on everything without being noticed. Jason was talking, flipping through the fake proposal, and Derek was nodding along, clearly buying into the whole thing. At 7:40, the restaurant door opened, and there she was. She walked in like she owned the place, her heels clicking against the marble floor, her hair perfectly styled. She looked around briefly before spotting Derek and making her way over to the table. She hadn't seen me yet. When she reached the table, she leaned down to kiss Derek on the cheek, her smile warm and affectionate. That was it, the confirmation I needed. My stomach churned as I watched her settle into the seat beside him, completely oblivious to the fact that her world was about to come crashing down. Jason gave me a subtle nod, our agreed-upon signal. I stood up, steadied myself, and walked toward their table. My footsteps felt impossibly loud as I crossed the room, and for a split second I thought about turning back. But no, this was it. This was what I'd been waiting for. When I reached their table, Derek noticed me first. His face twisted in confusion, and then panic set in as realization dawned. Finally, Claire looked up a moment later, her expression shifting from surprise to absolute shock. "Well," I said, sliding into an empty chair at their table, "this looks cozy. Are we discussing investments, or is this a different kind of deal?" Claire's face went pale, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Derek shifted uncomfortably in his seat, glancing between me and Jason like he'd been caught stealing. "Michael, what are you doing here?" Claire finally managed to sputter, her voice barely above a whisper. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. "Oh, just thought I'd stop by and see what my wife is up to. Imagine my surprise when I find this little setup." Her face crumpled as she realized there was no talking her way out of this. And that's when the real fireworks began. The tension at the table was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Claire sat frozen, her face pale and her mouth slightly open as if searching for the right words. Derek, on the other hand, looked like a deer caught in headlights. Jason kept his composure, calmly closing the folder of the fake investment proposal and leaning back in his chair, letting me take the lead. Well, I said, leaning forward, staring directly at Claire, "are you going to explain this, or should I start reading your text aloud for everyone here?" Her eyes darted to Derek, then back to me, her panic evident. "Michael, this isn't what it looks like," she said, her voice shaky. "I was just meeting Derek for..." "For what, Claire?" I cut her off, my voice sharp. "Business? A friendly catch-up? Because your messages say otherwise." Derek, who had been trying to shrink into his chair, finally spoke. "Look, man, I don't know what you think is going on." "Shut up," I snapped, glaring at him. "You don't get to talk." Jason shifted slightly, as if to position himself between Derek and me in case things escalated, but I wasn't interested in throwing punches, not yet anyway. This wasn't about Derek, it was about Claire, and I wanted her to hear every word. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of screenshots. "You know, Claire, I thought something was off when I started getting your messages on my phone. Remember that fancy smartwatch I bought you? Turns out it's pretty damn handy." Her face went from pale to bright red in an instant. Michael, I can explain. Explain what? This? I said, holding up my phone and scrolling through the messages. Let me read you a few highlights. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. Or how about, I'll book the hotel for next time. I can't wait to have you all to myself. Claire's mouth opened, but no words came out. Around us, a few heads turned, and I realized my voice had gotten louder. I didn't care. Let them watch. Let them see what betrayal looks like. Derek shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Dude, this is between you two. I don't want any trouble. I turned my glare on him. You don't want trouble? Then maybe you shouldn't be sleeping with another man's wife. He flinched, and I turned back to you. You've not only betrayed me, but you've also made me feel like an idiot. How long has this been going on? How many times did you lie to my face while sneaking around with him? Michael, please, she said, her voice cracking as tears welled up in her eyes. I was confused. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Oh, you didn't mean for it to go this far. So what was the plan, Claire? Were you going to keep lying to me forever, or were you just waiting for the right time to trade me in? Tears streamed down her face now, but I felt no sympathy. She had made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. I stood up, pushing my chair back. I hope you and Derek had a great time, Claire, because you'll have plenty of time to think about it when you're packing your things. She reached out, grabbing my arm. Michael, wait, don't do this, please, let's talk about it. I shook her off, my voice cold. We're done, Claire. You've destroyed everything we built together, and you don't get to beg your way out of this. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving her and Derek sitting there in stunned silence. Jason followed me out, giving me a pat on the back as we reached the sidewalk. Huh, you handled that better than I would have, he said. I didn't feel triumphant, though. I felt numb, like the ground had been ripped out from under me. But one thing was clear, I was done with Claire and her lies. When I got home that night, the house felt cold and empty. Claire hadn't returned yet, which was fine by me. I wasn't ready to deal with her excuses or crocodile tears. I poured myself a drink, sat on the couch, and stared at the folder of screenshots on my phone. Each message was like a dagger, but they were also my armor. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was resolved. The next morning, Claire walked in, looking disheveled. She'd obviously been crying, but I wasn't about to let that soften me. Michael, can we talk? She said softly, her voice trembling. I didn't even look up from my coffee. Sure. Let's talk about your texts to Derek, or the hotel room, or the lies you've been feeding me for months. Where would you like to start? Her face crumpled, and she sank into the chair across from me. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know I messed up. I didn't mean for this to happen. Didn't mean for what to happen, I snapped, slamming my mug on the table. The affair, the lies, or the fact that you got caught. Tears streamed down her face. It wasn't like that, Michael. I don't know, I felt lost. I didn't know how to tell you I was unhappy. Unhappy, I shot back, my voice rising. So your solution was to sneak around with Derek and sleep with him? To lie to my face every single day? Do you even realize what you've done? I know I hurt you, she said, her voice breaking, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through it. I laughed bitterly. Fix this? Claire, you destroyed our marriage. You didn't just cheat on me. You destroyed any trust we had. There's no fixing that. She started pleading, apologizing, promising me it would never happen again, but her words felt empty. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of screenshots, laying it on the table in front of her. Here's the truth, Claire. Every text, every lie, every excuse, I have it all. She glanced at the screen, her face going pale. Michael, please, you don't need to do this. I do, I said firmly, because I want you to understand exactly what you've done. You didn't just hurt me, you betrayed the very foundation of our relationship. And now you're going to face the consequences. I grabbed my car keys and stood up. I've already contacted a lawyer. You'll be hearing from them soon. Pack your things and figure out where you're going to stay because I'm done. She broke down completely, sobbing and begging me to reconsider, but I didn't look back. I walked out the door and left her to wallow in the mess she'd created. For the first time in months, I felt like I was reclaiming my life. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't without pain, but I knew I was doing the right thing. Claire had made her choices, and now it was time for me to make mine. The days following my confrontation with Claire felt like a whirlwind. I moved quickly. I contacted my lawyer, filed for divorce, and started working on separating our finances. Claire tried to reach out constantly, blowing up my phone with calls and texts, but I ignored them all. I had nothing left to say. The evidence I'd collected was airtight. My lawyer said it would make the divorce proceedings straightforward, especially in California, where her infidelity could impact things like spousal support. I handed over the screenshots, the dates, and even the details of her business dinner with Derek. My lawyer assured me I was in a strong position, which gave me some peace of mind, but it didn't ease the emotional toll. Meanwhile, Claire's carefully constructed world was beginning to crumble. Word started getting out about what had happened. Jason, being the friend he is, let a few mutual acquaintances know about the situation, not in a gossipy way, but enough that the truth started spreading through our social circles. Claire's lover Derek wasn't spared either. Jason made sure his fake business deal fell apart, which apparently sent Derek into a panic. I heard through the grapevine that Derek's boss caught wind of his unprofessional behavior and wasn't too happy about it. By the end of the week, both Claire and Derek were facing the fallout of their actions. Claire tried everything to salvage her reputation. She reached out to our friends, spinning some sob story about how she had made a mistake and that she was working to make amends, but people saw through her act. The fact that I had evidence and wasn't shy about sharing it when needed meant that her lies didn't hold up. Slowly but surely, her support network started to dwindle. At home, I was preparing to move out. I didn't want to stay in the house anymore. It was filled with memories of a life that no longer existed, and I needed a fresh start. I packed my belongings piece by piece, leaving Claire to figure out what she'd do with the house. Honestly, I didn't care. I just wanted to be done with her. One evening, while I was packing, Claire showed up unexpectedly. She stood in the doorway, her eyes red and puffy, clutching a tissue. "Michael," she said softly, "please, can we just talk? I know I screwed up, but I can't lose you." I didn't even look up from the box I was filling. "Claire, there's nothing left to talk about. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry. I know I've said it a million times, but I am. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was stupid, selfish." "Yeah," I interrupted, finally looking at her. "You were. And now you're facing the consequences. That's how life works." Her tears started again, and she sank onto the couch. "I don't know what to do without you, Michael. I'll do anything to fix this." I shook my head, feeling nothing but exhaustion. "You're on your own, Claire. You had a good thing, and you threw it away. Now you have to live with that." And that was the last time I saw her. I finished packing that night, and by the next day, I was gone. For the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of freedom. In part, the pain was still there, but it was accompanied by a growing sense of relief. Claire's lies were behind me now, and I was ready to start rebuilding my life without her. Once I was out of the house, I thought the worst was behind me. But for Claire, the fallout was just beginning. Over the weeks that followed, her carefully constructed life unraveled piece by piece, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Mutual friends who had once adored her began distancing themselves. Word had spread about her affair, and with the screenshots I'd shared with a few trusted people, it was clear she couldn't deny it. She tried, of course. Claire always had a way with words, but people weren't buying it this time. The evidence was too strong, and her attempts to paint herself as the victim only made her look worse. I heard through the grapevine that Derek had cut ties with her as well. After Jason's fake business deal fell through, Derek must have realized his connection to Claire was more trouble than it was worth. He ghosted her completely, leaving her to face the wreckage of her life alone. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had risked everything for him, and in the end, he left her high and dry. Claire started reaching out to me again, but this time it wasn't just apologetic texts. She was practically begging. She'd send messages like, "Michael, I know I messed up, but I need you. I can't do this without you." Or, "Please, let's start over. I've changed. I'll do anything to make this right." It was the same story over and over, and every time I ignored her. I knew she wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry for what she'd lost. Her reputation, her lover, her stable marriage, everything she'd taken for granted was gone. She tried to call me one night, and when I didn't pick up, she left a voicemail sobbing and pleading for a second chance. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. At one point, she even showed up at my new apartment. I'd just gotten home from work when I saw her standing outside, clutching a small box. She looked disheveled, like she hadn't slept in days. "Michael," she said softly, her voice trembling, "please, can we talk? I just want a chance to explain." I crossed my arms and stared at her. "Explain what, Claire? The texts, the hotel, the fact that you lied to me for months? What's left to explain?" Her face crumpled and she held out the box. "I found some of your things while I was packing. I thought you might want them. I didn't take the box. Claire, you don't need an excuse to show up here. Just say what you really want." Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered, "I want you back." I shook my head. "That's never going to happen. You need to move on, Claire. We're done." She broke down completely, sobbing as I walked inside and shut the door. I felt a pang of guilt. After all, this was someone I'd once loved, but it was drowned out by the memory of everything she'd done. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into giving her another chance. That was the last time I saw her. From what I've heard, she's been struggling ever since. She's still living in the house, barely managing to keep up with the payments. Her friends have drifted away, and her social media, which used to be filled with glamorous posts about her perfect life, is now eerily quiet. It's like she disappeared, and honestly, I don't feel bad for her. She made her bed, and now she has to lie in it. For me, it was the closure I needed. Claire's downfall wasn't something I set out to cause, but seeing her face the consequences of her actions felt like justice. She had spent years building herself up as someone untouchable, someone who could do no wrong, and now, without the lies and the facade, she was just another person who had to face the truth about herself. Now I'm ready for whatever comes next. For the first time in a long time, I feel free, free to build the life I want, free to be myself, and free to never settle for less than I deserve. And honestly, that freedom feels better than anything I've ever known. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Tell me what you think about that story. Have a good day, and bye.